I'm Maria Hall Brown, and this is LA Currents. Writer Bobby Ackhart wrote, "Because you never know the day before is the day before, make sure you prepare for tomorrow." And someone who knows the value of preparation is Carol Parks. She's the general manager of the Los Angeles Emergency Management Department. So nice to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here, Maria.
All right, so we are in a building that I am actually really used to having a little bit more action. I mean, I know there are a few things happening, you know, with people working virtually, but we're in the Emergency Management Department, are we not?
We are. You're in the city's Emergency Operations Center. This is the hub of coordination whenever anything happens of large eventuality affecting the residents and businesses of LA City.
Well, with the pandemic, you know, people are working virtually at home, but I think it's also probably a good sign that things are a little quiet right now.
They are. There's always something going on, though, whether it's a localized event or something affecting everyone. But it's our job to be sure that the very building where we're sitting today is always ready when we need to react very quickly when something major happens in our city.
Okay, and one of the things that is quite potentially something that would happen in our city are earthquakes.
Exactly.
And, you know, one of the things that is really important is to prepare, as I was saying earlier. And one of the things that the city does is actually kind of give everybody a little bit of a run through of what one should do in an earthquake. It's actually called the Great ShakeOut.
Yes, the Great ShakeOut is actually an international event. You know, it's grown over the years. It's so significant that we want everybody around the world to take just a few seconds out of their busy day to practice what we should do when an earthquake happens. Because we don't know where we will be. Even though we live here and work in Los Angeles, we could be somewhere else in the world and an earthquake happens. And we want to make sure everyone knows exactly how to safely respond when an earthquake happens.
So what is the aim of the Great Shakeout? I mean, what is the point? I mean, we talk about preparation, but maybe just making people start to think a little bit more, look around their surroundings, understand where they are, where they might be. I mean, what are some of the key elements of the Great Shakeout?
Well, the key element, first of all, as I mentioned earlier, is just to pause. Wherever you are, take a few moments, drop, cover, and hold on safely. You know, so many times people will run to a doorway or run outside to see what happened, but we could endanger ourselves by doing that. So it's an opportunity to remind everyone to drop, cover, and hold on under something sturdy until the shaking stops. So it's a drill. You know, a lot of times when we don't practice, we forget. So it's an opportunity on October the 21st at 10:21 a.m. to drop, cover, and hold on. And even for those who may be in wheelchairs, it's an opportunity for them to lock their chairs and to practice being safe. We are very mindful that you can be any number of places. You can be driving your car or riding a bike. And there's a great website that will tell you what to do no matter wherever you are. You may not be here at the ELC, which is seismically safe, so we just want you to know what to do. And we have a lot of resources to teach everyone exactly how to be safe.
You know what, something you just said made me think, not everybody is physically capable, and you know, there are a lot of people that may be elderly or infirm, or even small children who may not understand what's happening. But if you go through these things consistently, you have the opportunity to make it second nature. Is that true?
Very true. And that's where practice comes. So we encourage you to talk about it with family and friends. It's not a fun topic, but it's a safe topic because we want to make sure those who are around us know how to best prepare. If your child is at school, we want them to know how to be ready.
Okay, so how does the city support the Great Shakeout? What are some of the things that the city does in support of, you know, I mean, do you participate with schools, businesses? I mean, how is that?
Yes.
How is it organized?
Well, we amplify the messaging. So Earthquake Country Alliance has a really good website that we fully support. We are a partner. We actually register the city so that every city department can participate. Through our social media networks, on our internet sites, we advertise it is happening. Whenever we do a blog or a podcast, we encourage everyone to prepare. We also do community outreach efforts. We have a program called Ready Your LA Neighborhood, which we will hear about later, but we encourage everyone, whether you're an individual, a business, a neighborhood, to get involved. So we share the message. We want everyone across the city to know what the Shakeout Day is. We do it every year, but it's an opportunity to get everyone involved and engaged.
Do we learn new information each year that kind of gets added? You mentioned earlier about, some of us think that, oh, we were supposed to go into a door frame. And has that information shifted to now you should probably not make that effort to go somewhere else, but try to get under something?
We do update our messaging to make it more applicable. Now we're in the pandemic, we're in COVID.
Oh, good point.
And so what we need to do is, while we're practicing our social distancing and being safe and all of that, we use that as an opportunity to say, hey, even though we're in a pandemic, we still have to remember one of the greatest threats here in California is earthquakes. So we take every opportunity we can to validate information, to make sure people understand what they should and should not do.
From your vantage point, I mean, you're part of the program that addresses emergencies on a grand scale in a very authoritarian, effective way, getting resources out to people as fast as humanly possible. So what happens in here if all of a sudden we hear the alert go off and there's a major earthquake? How does EMD come into action?
EMD comes into action very, very quickly. Our department is responsible for citywide emergency planning and preparedness. And so that includes us writing plans, training to those plans, exercising those plans, so that not only our department, but any other city department who's responding is ready, and that their field responders know what to do. We get information in our business. The terminology situational awareness is very important, because we want to know what's happened, who's impacted, what city government is doing about it, and what we would like our general population to do about it. So we coordinate a lot of resources here, and we maintain situational awareness so that the policymakers can make the very best decision to get back to normal as quickly as possible.
What are some of the biggest mistakes the general populace makes in an emergency? I mean, are there things that would make your job a lot easier, or even any kind of emergency responder's job a lot easier, if the populace just sort of had ingrained in them?
I'm so glad you asked me that question, Maria. One of the big things that we encourage people to do is get prepared in advance. We want to be proactive and not reactive. Taking some time out of your busy day, or saving some dollars, or investing in personal preparedness is so important. The more we as individuals, as Angelenos, know how to prepare for disasters, the better we will respond. And to understand the different types of disasters that could happen here. Earthquakes is just one of the hazards, but the more informed we are, the more we prepare for home, for work, when we're in transit, the better we will be. So, take a few moments out of the family meeting time that we may do to talk about how will the family respond? How will we communicate with each other? If there are older adult family members or family members with access and functional needs, how do we make sure that they are prepared and that their needs can be met? So we offer, all of these free resources. Nothing that we do here at the City Emergency Management Department costs anything. We just want to share the information. It's available. We do have information available in multiple languages, and we just want to be sure everyone knows well in advance how we as a city will respond and how they should respond.
Communication being the key, because you just can't normally assume that your mobile phone's going to be available, or even if the mobile phone is going to work in a scenario in which there's been a catastrophe of some kind. So the communication part, I imagine, is probably very, very, very high on the list of priorities.
It is. And we connect with your Channel 35. We connect with all of the major media networks and we have a social media presence. So our job is to get information out very quickly. And even though there may be misinformation, the information that we provide is information that we vetted, and it's information that will ensure Angelenos are safe. We do know that LA is huge and that first responders can't get to everyone right away. So that's why we want to educate, so that, you may be your neighbor's first responders. So if you're educated and you know what to do, you may very well save your neighbor's life. And that's the message that we get across.
So along those lines of preparation, and obviously first responders are going to get to you as fast as humanly possible, but you never know the degree and level of a complicated scenario.
Correct.
So what's at the very least, how long should someone be prepared to be okay on their own?
At a minimum, at least 3 days. Okay. That would be our recommendation. Longer is even better, but at a minimum. And levels of preparedness are different for different people. So, I've gotten questions over the years, well, suppose, everyone can't prepare for that amount of time. Do what you can do. Simple step, whether it's buying non-perishable food and water, do that. Whether or not it's getting a small amount of cash, whatever your greatest need or my greatest need is taking a few moments to think about what those needs are and making sure that those resources are readily available.
Do we have any idea where the Great ShakeOut started and why it began and where it came from and how many? You talked about it being international. That actually really surprised me. I think of Southern California and I think earthquake, but you think about all the other parts of the world and maybe they don't necessarily have that degree of awareness about that kind of thing. But obviously they do happen. So it seems to be a monumental undertaking to have so many people participate for one specific thing.
Yes. Well, California is a great model. Our community emergency response team program started here. We've had several earthquakes across the state that have been significant. Northridge being the latest, most significant one here in the Los Angeles area. So because of that, this nonprofit organization evolved and served as a great platform to educate people about earthquake safety and awareness. And so it's grown over the years so that other communities, because if you may recall, there have been some cities on the East Coast that have had earthquakes before. So seismic activity can really happen anywhere. So California has been a leader in earthquake awareness, and we want to make sure that we share that information across the globe.
And I really don't know if this is in your realm, but we do seem to be retrofitting and prepared, and even the way we construct our buildings in Southern California, we seem to have, perhaps a better handle on not causing damage or not having a catastrophic experience if in fact we have an earthquake. Is that true or not necessarily true?
That is true. Over the years, the building codes have been improved and enhanced to ensure seismic safety. The mayor has had his own initiatives on seismic retrofitting. So we have done a lot of good work in that area, and we continue to do. And each earthquake teaches us something that we didn't know before, so we continue to enhance our building codes to make sure that they are safe and up to date. And we also encourage non-structural retrofitting, and that's what you and I can do and anyone else to ensure that when we're in our homes or wherever we live, that things that can fall, break, and cause harm, physical harm, that those things are mounted, or that, we use earthquake putty for things that could fall over and break any glass. So there are a lot of inexpensive things that we can do to ensure that internal to wherever we live, that those areas are safe as well.
And the more we're prepared, the more you don't have to worry about us.
Exactly.
Well, it's delightful talking with you, Carol.
Very delightful talking to you, Maria. And I do encourage you to please share the message of preparedness amongst the city family, because we want to develop a culture of preparedness here in the city of Los Angeles.
All right. And we've got a lot more information for you coming up in just a moment. continuing with our conversation about preparation, you may think that it's just for you and your family, but think about others around you when getting prepared. And I'm delighted to be joined by CRISANTA GONZALEZ. She's the Community Preparedness and Engagement Planning Division Chief. That's a long title, which means that you've got a lot of information. But the whole idea of thinking about preparation for any kind of catastrophe, and earthquake in particular, should actually maybe encompass just more than your tiny little unit.
Absolutely. Your tiny little unit actually is connected to many units. So your tiny little unit could also consist of your pets. You know, do you have updated records for your pets? And then you also have your neighbors. Is there anybody in your neighborhood who may need your help or your assistance during an earthquake? Are you going to need assistance during your earthquake? So there's also involving that community. There's the schools if you have family members who are in school, or senior centers if you have family members who are in senior centers. So the community tends to be larger and larger and larger as you start to think about how we can help each other during this, catastrophic time.
You brought up some interesting points. I mean, I would have automatically thought of my children's school if, in fact, I do have, or I have children, or if someone has children. But the neighborhood, and I think maybe we've started to think about that even a little bit more now that we've experienced this pandemic, understanding that people might be isolated and alone and they might need help, and that the fact that that can be taken into consideration during a catastrophe. So how does one reach out and build that larger community that you can consider making preparations for?
It's actually a very hard thing to do in the city of Los Angeles. People have a hard time reaching out to their neighbors and identifying their neighbors and getting to know their neighbors. We kind of drive by each other and kind of say, hey, how's it going, but we never actually dig deep into finding them. So the city of LA has created a great resource. It's called Ready Your LA Neighborhood. We like to call it Rylan, if Rylan is the nickname, and it's available on our website. And what this tool does is it's a free tool where you can get to know your neighbors, and you can also create a plan with them. And all it takes is one leader in the community to host a meeting, and then you invite your neighbors over, or you could do it virtually. We also have set it up on our website to do a virtual DIY Rylan. And so at the end of this, meet and greet, you come out with a plan. So at the end of that, at the end of 90 minutes or so, you know exactly what to do after an earthquake, and you know exactly what to do to help each other evacuate in the event of a wildfire or whatever it may be, or to check on each other and identify your neighbors who are vulnerable, identify any pets in your street, identify where your utility shutoffs are, identify how you're going to get together to check on everybody, to knock on the doors, have okay help signs. So you have a complete all hazards approach to your neighborhood. And the benefit is you get to know all your neighbors. So it's kind of a win-win.
When did Ryland start? I mean, how long has this program been in place?
About 2018, we implemented the first version of Ryland. And so we took the tool Map Your Neighborhood because it was a recognized tool throughout the country. It started in Washington. And so Dr. Luann Johnson created this flip chart where neighbors could get together in their home and fill out names and addresses and phone numbers and skills and equipment and locations of utilities. So we took that tool and we actually had Dr. Johnson's help to create and expand on that tool. So we've reiterated a couple of times from the initial creation of it, and now we're really proud to say that our website, now you can download all the forms virtually. We're excited to announce that we've just got approved for some funding for possibly a pilot for an app, a cell phone app. So that possibly will be coming next year or the year after. So we're constantly improving it. We're constantly trying to find ways to reach out to other entities, neighborhood associations and so forth that can help us pilot these programs and get the word out.
Have you seen it in action? Has there been what circumstance triggered a Ryland activation that you got to see whether it worked or didn't work, or how?
I presented Ryland to a homeowners association in the Valley, in the San Fernando Valley, and the gentleman who was the leader there, Ron Scarin, he actually called me, and there was a 10 or 12 hour power outage in Chatsworth where he lives. So it was a condominium group, and he said that they activated their Ryland, and they were able to identify who had flashlights, who had a generator, who was possibly on oxygen, or who was alone. And so they started going down the list of those things, and they used their Ryland to check on each other and to support each other through that 12-hour period.
So does a Ryland necessarily have to have a certain geographic area, or can it just be, like you said, a condo complex? I mean, what are the parameters of making a Ryland plan?
That's a great question. So what the Ryland consists of is which of your neighbors you can get to in the first hour. We call it the golden hour.
Okay.
So in the golden hour is the crucial time when you can mitigate injuries, you can mitigate hazards in your neighborhood, like down power wires, etc. So in that hour, who can you touch? How many doors can you touch in the hour? And that's your border. That's your Ryland border. So if you walk out of your street and you look to the left and to the right, who can you get to, or your apartment door, or your floor? Who can you get to in an hour, and then get back together and decide how you're going to stabilize your neighborhood. That's your parameters. We usually recommend, if it's a regular single house neighborhood, 10 to 15 homes, maybe even 20. If it's a large apartment complex, one floor. If it's a smaller apartment complex, maybe the whole building. If it's condominiums, and they're pretty straightforward, maybe 10. If you live in a canyon area, maybe 5 to 7 homes is more appropriate. So depending on that hour limit is how you want to designate how big your plan. And you can have multiple Ryland plans. You can break your street up into 3 or 4 Ryland plans.
So what are the fundamental things that one should consider being part? I mean, obviously checking on those who might be infirm, or making sure that you understand who's in the area, et cetera. But what are some of the things that should be in place? Water.
Right. So you
food,
want to have
whatever.
a go bag. So you have, if you're going to stay where you're at, which we recommend after an earthquake because we want to keep the roads open for our firefighters and our police and our responders, then you want to have a couple of go bags. You want to have your bag with supplies in case you need to leave the home, your home's damaged, so something with food and things like that. But you also want to have a response bag, and the response bag is a Ryland bag, we call it, and we recommend that you tie it to the foot of your bed, and that holds your sturdy shoes, a bicycle helmet or a hard helmet if you have it, a flashlight, a whistle, an extra pair of reading glasses if you need them. And that's something that as soon as you feel the earthquake and it stops shaking, you can put that protective equipment on and then go out and help your neighbors by following the 9 steps of Ryland after an earthquake.
9 steps. Do you know what all 9 of them are? Do you have them memorized?
I have pretty much one of them memorized.
Okay.
So the first one is to check on your friends and family inside the home. So you check on yourself and your family inside the home, put on your personal equipment. The second is to check your gas valve. So you want to check to see, so you can see the dial spinning, hear it hissing, or you smell it. If you don't see any of those, leave it alone. If you do see any of those 3 or experiencing those 3, we recommend that you shut it off. So it's just a quarter turn on the pipe. Fill up your sink and your bathtub with water, so you have water to use in case the water mains break. And then you're also going to want to take your fire extinguisher, and as you walk out, take your OK and help sign that is included in the Ryland packet and put it on your window. You're either OK and you're going to the care center, or you need help. And if you're OK and you're going to the meeting site where you're going to break up into teams, then you take your fire extinguisher and you leave it out in the front so that your whole street will have many fire extinguishers in case your neighbors need it, in case first responders need a fire extinguisher, etc. And then you go to your gathering site, and there you break up into 4 teams. So one's a communication team, so they can listen to the radio. KNX 1070 radio is a great resource. Another is a hazards team that goes out and ropes off any hazardous downed wires, whatever you may find. Another one is to go door to door and check on the OK and help signs to see if anybody needs to be brought to a care center, which you pick a home or a yard, and that's going to be your care center on your street.
But the communication part, I mean, I mentioned this with Carol Parks, is we can't rely on our mobile phones, et cetera. I just love the idea of just even physically having a sign on the front of the house that explains things to people. I mean, it's visible, it's easy, it's straightforward, and it's clear. I think that that's interesting. I know that there's that issue with pets, making sure that, I know that the issue of, are there animals, how many animals, that kind of thing is important too, is it not?
Yes, it is important. And Ryland actually has a page where the neighbors get together and they identify all the adult names, all the children's names, all the pets' names, what type of pets. If I'm not at home, what do you want me to do with your pet? And so the care center may also turn into a pet shelter, a temporary pet shelter. So you identify, many times when I've gone to help neighborhoods create a plan, a Ryland plan, they've identified a care center for humans and then a care center for pets in case their parents aren't home. So, depending on what your street needs are, pets are a very important part of planning.
You mentioned making sure the roads are clear so that first responders and fire trucks, et cetera, can get through. But what are some of the other things that Ryland does that helps on the grand scale in an emergency scenario, getting people out to take care of issues that, you know, the regular populace can't handle?
So the reality is that we have less than 10,000 police officers and less than 5,000 firefighters. So in a catastrophic event, whether that's an earthquake or a wildfire event or a high wind event or whatever the event may be, they're going to be assigned to priorities, things that are high risk like hospitals, senior centers, schools. So as much as they want to be at your neighborhood, there's no way that less than 10, that those numbers logistically can get to your neighborhood. So in the grand scheme of things, the more your neighborhood is prepared, then you understand that you're going to be your own first responder. So in the event of a wildfire evacuation, Ryland is going to help you identify those vulnerable people. And instead of meeting at a gathering site and forming teams, you're going to meet at your gathering site and you're going to use your list to check off vulnerable people and go knock on their doors and get them in, so that that's going to help firefighters that maybe would be called to an evacuation for some elderly people that are at home alone. They're going to be able to go focus on their other priorities, hospitals. So in the grand scheme of things, the more you are personally prepared and your neighborhood is prepared, the more we can work around our limitations with city resources.
So with this remarkable website, are there other assets or other tools that are available to the residents of Los Angeles to get prepared for whatever might come their way?
Yeah, on our website we also have checklists that you can download. We also want to make sure that everybody signed up for Notify LA. So Notify LA is our notification system. It's the way for residents to get the alerts, official alerts from the city, whether they need to stay in place or evacuate, or if there's a water boiling, or whatever the notification alert is, this is the way to do it. And we recommend that you text the word READY to 888-777, or go on our website and fill out your complete profile, so that if we send geographically specific alerts, you'll be able to get them if you complete your full profile on our website.
So that particular app, which I have on my phone, is geo-focused, so it knows where I am, and so that if there's something happening in the area that I'm in, it will say, time to go, this is happening.
That's a great question. If you go and complete your full profile, yes, it will recognize you. If you just text the word READY to 888-777, then you'll only get the general all-city notifications. So we highly recommend that you go in and complete the full profile, so you'll get all of the alerts that pertain to your area.
Okay, so very specifically, I mean, these are great tools to be used. And, as I said at the very beginning, you never know when the day before is, so prepare for tomorrow.
Yeah.
What are the websites that people can?
ReadyLA.org.
Okay.
So that's our website where you can find all these tools. There's also earthquake.la.org.
Okay.
That has a map of earthquakes that are happening, and to be able to download the California Shake app, that's also on there. So those are our two cities. You also recommend you look at LA Fire Department, LAFD.org. They have great Twitter feeds, and they're constantly updating their Twitter whenever there's an issue or an event or an emergency. You can also follow their Twitter. So those are some of the great sites that you can go for resources.
And just this came to mind while you were speaking. With Ryland, if you can't get anybody, if you can't get everybody to participate, it's still better to have some people participate.
Absolutely, yeah. That's actually what happens a lot. Is you invite 100% of your neighbors, and maybe 20 or 30 show up. But the wonderful thing about Ryland is that in the event of a disaster, when that 10, 20, 15, 30% of your neighbors are out on the streets with their hard hats or their bicycle helmets and their gloves, and they're actually out there working, those 80 or 90% that didn't show up at the meetings, they're going to come out and they're going to ask how they can help. So you never assume that, just because they didn't come to the meeting, they're going to be there to help. So now you can hand them a card and say, okay, you're going to be on this team, here's what you're going to do on this team. So it's a wonderful way to be prepared, and even if they don't come to the meetings, they'll still be able to help in the moment.
All right. Well, great information. I really appreciate your time.
Sure. Thank you.
Lots of preparation is the most cornerstone of all of this.
Yes.
All right. Get prepared. You must. And that's a wrap on this LA Currents.